If you're anything like most people, you don't have to search your memory too far back to remember a time that you failed miserably. Of course, there's an exception to every rule, so for the one or two of you who are perfect, this is not for you. I'll never forget the time that I came face to face with my biggest professional failure. The year was 2017. I was working in the Houses of Parliament and I was speaking to one of my colleagues. I mentioned to him that I had a desire to study a master's degree at the University of Oxford. And he said, "Oh, that's no problem, you'll be able to get in, just so long as you got a 2-1. You did get a 2-1, right?" I tried to deflect, but the man was persistent. "You did get a 2-1, right?" My face was on fire. I wanted to hide under the table or run out of the room. "You got a 2-1, right?" For those of you who aren't aware, a 2-1 is what's considered a good grade here in the UK for your undergraduate degree. And it's often what's required in order to get a graduate job. I was really devastated that I didn't achieve that because growing up, I had always been dedicated to my schooling. I was a teacher's pet, but during my undergraduate degree, I struggled with procrastination, perfectionism, and depression. And during my time at the University of Warwick, I didn't score a 2-1. That's the reason why people can look at this picture and see happiness, joy, and accomplishment. And I look at it and see sorrow, shame, and failure. Failure has many faces. What if I was to tell you that failure and success are two sides of the same coin, and what ultimately determines your outcome is what you believe? My purpose for being here today is to talk to you about 3 ideas from emotional risk management to help you thrive in the face of failure. In case you're wondering, what is emotional risk management? What does it have to do with failure? It's the process of acknowledging, assessing, and harnessing your emotions to dramatically improve your odds of making failure the foundation of your success. Firstly, when faced with failure, we need to pause for perspective. Slowing down time in our minds helps us to reflect more deeply and understand what happened and why. It helps to reduce feelings of panic, disappointment, and frustration, which can cloud our judgment. Going back to the moment that I found out that I received a 3rd instead of a 2-1, I felt despair wash over me. Not only was I emotionally shattered, but I felt like my world was coming to an end. If I had known then what I know now, the first thing that I would have done would be to pause for perspective. Instead, I was so deeply traumatized that years later, I spoke to a counsellor to help me deal with these issues. In the hope that my experience will help you to avoid similar despair, I'm going to share some of the tools that I learned from counselling. And one of the tools that I learned was asking questions. Specifically, questions to help change your perspective. I invite you to think back to a time when you failed at something that was important to you. I know, you're welcome. It may be a personal goal, perhaps a relationship or a business venture. It could be something that you're going through right now. With your massive failure in mind, I invite you to ask yourself these questions. Will this matter in time? Will this matter in 5 years' time? Will this matter in 10 years' time? You might even find that you're wrong about this. I thought that underperforming in my degree would impact me for far longer than it actually did. Is this something that you'll tell your grandchildren? And if you were to tell them, what would you want to tell them about how you dealt with the situation? These questions will help you transition from wallowing in shame to recognizing that this is a temporary setback. As you can see, asking yourself these questions allows for introspection. It helps you to explore your emotions, your feelings, and your motivations. It can help you to uncover your assumptions and to have a more open mind in order to change those beliefs which are outdated or unhelpful. Other helpful questions that you can ask. Is what you're saying to yourself true? I said to myself, I'm a failure. That's not true. I'm not a failure. I failed to achieve something that I wanted to achieve, but that did not mean that I was a failure. Don't believe everything that you think. Another question for you to ask. Is what I'm saying to myself helpful? I said to myself, I got a 3rd repeatedly, and whilst that was true, it wasn't helpful. Something else to consider is, what would you say to a friend in the same situation? We are oftentimes far kinder to other people than we are to ourselves. Be a friend to yourself. Another question: why are you in this situation? It may be that it's completely your fault because of your poor decisions, or it could be through outside factors that you couldn't have foreseen. Either way, try to look at the situation from two perspectives. Firstly, from curiosity. What happened here? Try to look at it with an open mind rather than with judgment. And secondly, with compassion for the situation and with compassion for yourself. Even if it's completely your fault, there's still a reason why you did what you did and you ended up in that situation. This is not to excuse any accountability, but to understand what happened and why in order to make better decisions in the future. When I look at my situation in hindsight, I'm actually grateful that I didn't get a 2-1, because if I had, I wouldn't be standing here before you today. My journey has been filled with ups and downs, it's been filled with twists and turns, and today I'm working as a risk and project management expert. So I work on multi-billion-dollar projects internationally. I want to quickly take you behind the scenes of a multi-billion-pound project in the hope to give you a demonstration of why pausing for perspective is the perfect first step to take when facing failure. You may be surprised to learn that the largest academic database on projects held by Oxford Global Projects has found that only 1 in 250 projects is delivered on time, on budget, and with the expected benefits. I want to take you behind the scenes. So imagine you're sitting at a conference table with other infrastructure leaders. You're working on a £1 billion infrastructure project. And everybody is scratching their heads and thinking about, how can we collaborate? How can we work together effectively? Now, collaborating is clearly a no-brainer. But despite their best efforts, as the project gets underway, they run into problems. This is normal, and this is typical. Hence, we see these outcomes. What you might not know is that many project management professionals have a sixth sense which causes them, when they're coming to face difficult situations, to jump straight into solutions. And I'm sure that's not unique to project management professionals. Probably some of you can also relate to that. However, what was different with this project that allowed them to come in, that contributed to them coming in on time, on budget, and with the expected benefits, was that the leaders resisted the urge to jump straight into solution. Instead, they paused for perspective. And while doing this, they uncovered the root cause of their problems, and that was the contract. The contract didn't incentivize collaboration. It was actually a barrier to collaboration. To their credit, they changed the contract and reset the project to a successful path. They ended up saving time, saving money, and delivering a high-quality project after pausing for perspective in the midst of chaos. I know it sounds simple, but it's not easy to do in the face of enormous pressure and when there are billions on the line. However, it turned out to be one of the major reasons why they were their model project, that 1 of 250. In those emotionally charged moments when we come face to face with failure, it can be easy to do one of two things. Either to get stuck and watch our world unravel, or to dive straight into solution without properly considering our options, and more often than not, making the situation worse. I suggest that you take a third option, which is to pause for perspective, so that you manage your emotional risk, understand what happened and why, and you can make better actions going forward. Creating space for thoughtful analysis and emotional processing ultimately leads to more productive outcomes. But to get to those productive outcomes, you need a plan, which brings us to point 2, which is prepare your plan. My love for mega projects is rooted in a desire for an interest in impact, creating a vision for change, and building a realistic plan to help execute that vision. As you might imagine, at the heart of project management sits things like making sure that you have a clear goal, working towards that goal, adapting to change, and taking into consideration the needs of different stakeholders. I'm sure many of you are familiar with these concepts because they're essential for the accomplishment of any goal. However, I've discovered that one hugely important consideration that is often overlooked in our plans to mitigate risk and overcome personal failure are the emotional components. In simple terms, our plans are all head and no heart. The downside to a heartless plan is that it makes it harder to stay motivated. It makes it harder to deal with setbacks, and there's a higher risk of burnout. The secret to managing emotional risk when you're facing failure is to account for your emotions in building your comeback plan. Acknowledge how your emotions will impact you. Consider how you will speak to yourself and other people when dealing with extreme pressure. And figure out what it takes emotionally for you to create a positive atmosphere. Experience has taught me that the best plans balance both the head and the heart elements. With the head of your plan, including things like realistic goal setting, tracking progress, and managing resources, whilst the heart of your plan looks at your level of morale, your excitement, your engagement. So I've created a framework which captures the emotional elements of your plan. So the first element is that it needs to be holistic, so that you need to take into account both your head and your heart aspects. And when you include the heart aspect, it makes the overall plan better. It builds your resilience and increases your odds of overcoming failure and getting to success. The next step is engagement, which is about incorporating stakeholders with the understanding that your primary stakeholder is you. Who can help you on your journey? Consider working with mentors, with accountability partners, and with therapists. And don't forget to feed your broader needs for connection. Don't make a plan that doesn't have space for your most important relationships. And also consider how can you help other people as you're building your plan and not just focus on yourself. Alignment is checking that your action plan aligns with your goals and your action plan is making sense for the outcomes that you're actually achieving. So tracking that all of these things are aligned. Don't just check this at the outset, but make milestones to check this as you're going through the plan. Do these goals still make sense? Are the actions that you've taken the most appropriate for your goals? Is it working? Rewards help to create momentum. Not everything has to be a huge reward. You can have something like breakfast at Tiffany's once in a while, but even small things to anticipate can be useful. When you're starting off, it can be really helpful to get quick wins as you develop, and that can help you with your dopamine hits as well. Having that dopamine encourages you to maintain your momentum. Time off is important. I would encourage you to rest weekly. Personally, from Friday sunset to Saturday sunset, I do absolutely no work. No deadlines, no work emails, no LinkedIn. I take a complete rest. Invest inside, and you shouldn't just take weekly rest. You need to invest in restorative activities throughout the week as well. So do things like exploring nature, looking at creative things that you can undertake, and having some hobbies. What appears frivolous will make you more balanced and effective in the long term. I know it's easy when you're under pressure to feel like you have to go, 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 but preparing a holistic plan which will allow you to go further faster. Combining the emotional awareness with your rational elements will help you to develop a plan that's more sustainable. And this dual approach not only mitigates the impact of negative emotions, it also empowers you to turn setbacks into stepping stones. If you truly want to emerge stronger and to be more aligned with your aspirations, prioritize well-being alongside rational planning, and you'll create a pathway thriving in the face of failure. So for point 1, we looked at pausing for perspective. And ultimately, this gave us the opportunity to gain clarity and also to renew our thoughts. In step 2, we did our planning, and we incorporated the emotional elements that so often get left out. And now you're at the point where you need to take action. I'm sure that we can all agree that we can't simply think our way out of failure. At some point, we need to act. And our ability to take action or lack thereof, in the face of these challenges will forever determine our relationship with failure. What often hides in plain sight is the idea that taking action then exposes you to the risk of failing again. This is why so many people get frozen in fear. Thinking back to those counselling sessions that I mentioned previously, many times my counsellor, Philippa, has said to me, "Karlene, we've done enough talking. There's nothing left to talk about. Now it's time for you to take action." Fundamentally, there are two elements to taking action: to pursue and to persist. Where pursuing is creating momentum and acting out on that plan which you've created, and persisting is continuing to maintain that momentum in the face of challenges and setbacks. As if the degree of difficulty to pursue and persist was not high enough, today we have to be vigilant to avoid the trap of comparison with social media. So if you're not careful, you can see people going from peak to peak while we're wallowing in the valley of despair, and it's so easy to become discouraged. I would encourage you to limit your time on social media. Despite what you see, I think that it's really important you continue to pursue and persist with a goal of failing forward. Failure often provides valuable lessons that can contribute to your personal growth. Having a willingness to take risks and step out of your comfort zone is an essential element for success. I'm living proof that as long as you don't give up, you can get to where you need to be. I mentioned earlier that my journey was filled with ups and downs and twists and turns. And I'm going to take you back. So when I was a teenager, I first applied to the University of Oxford. And they were the only university to reject me. So I've told you about my experience of not earning a 2-1 at the University of Oxford. The University of Warwick. But after that experience, I wasn't even able to get a graduate job. As a result, I began working at Network Rail. And during that time, I developed my interest in risk and project management. And then I moved on to work at Transport for London as a risk manager. And during these transitions, there were times when I wasn't sure if I was on the right path. But I went from the Houses of Parliament to starting my own business so I could do risk consulting for major projects. I completed a diploma in risk management, which showed the University of Oxford that my time during my undergraduate degree was an aberration rather than the rule. In an effort to stand out, I applied for major publications. I was able to write for Entrepreneur online, and after 5 attempts, I was able to write for Forbes. I finally got into the University of Oxford to do a master's in major program management in 2019. What a high. I was nominated by my peers to work as a class representative. And then the pandemic came. And what should have been a small role was really difficult to balance in terms of dealing with the issues that my peers across the globe were facing and personal challenges that I had. So I had to pause the master's. I was stressed and I couldn't manage it all. So I paused for a year and then I picked it up again. But then there was a family emergency and I had to pause again. Nevertheless, I persisted and I finished my master's degree in major program management in 2023. I share this story not to impress you, but to impress upon you that if my career can flourish after failure, you can flourish after failure. Facing failure will lead you to have greater self-awareness. It will help you to understand your strengths and your weaknesses, as well as your values. Equally important, it will give you a story that you can share to encourage, inspire, and motivate other people and help them to see that setbacks are normal on the journey to success. So when you come face to face with failure, or if you're in the midst of failure right now, pause for perspective. Just take a moment to do that. Prepare your plan, which incorporates both your head and your heart, and then just pursue and persist. Remember those words that haunted me? You did get a 2-1, right? Well, today, the coin has flipped. I actually teach project management at the University of Oxford. What was my biggest professional failure has become one of my biggest professional successes. Henry Ford said it best: whether you think you can or whether you think you can't, you're right. Because success and failure are two sides of the same coin, and it all comes down to what you believe. Thank you.